True peace, Ken's engineers create light emitting plants that can be charged repeatedly. Man, peep the slang. This just came out today. Using specialized nanoparticles embedded in plant leaves, MIT engineers have created a light emitting plant that can be charged by an LED. After 10 seconds of charging, plants grow brightly from several minutes, and they can be recharged repeatedly. Man, peep the slang. These plants can produce light that is 10 times brighter than the first generation of glowing plants that the research group reported in 2017. We wanted to create a light emitting plant with particles that will absorb light, some of it, and emit it gradually, says Michael Strano, the Carbon D. Dubs Professor of Chemical Emerging at MIT and the senior author of the new study. This is a big step toward plant-based lighting, man. Peep the slang. Creating ambient light with the renewable chemical energy of living plants is a bold idea, says Sheila Kennedy, a professor of architecture at MIT and an author of the paper who has worked with Strano's group on plant-based lighting. It represents a fundamental shift in how we think about living plants and electrical energy for lighting, man. Peep the slang. The particles can also boost the light production of any other type of light-emitting plant, including those Strano Lab originally developed. Those plants use nanoparticles containing the enzyme luciferase, which is found in fireflies to produce light. The ability to mix and match functional nanoparticles inserted into a living plant to produce new functional properties is an example of the emerging field of plant nanobionics. Man, peep the slang. Light capacitors. Strano's lab has been working for several years in the new field of plant nanobionics, which aims to give plants novel features by embedding them with the different types of nanoparticles. The first generation of light-emitting plants contain nanoparticles that carry luciferase and luciferin, which work together to give fireflies their glow. Using these particles, the researchers generated watercress plants that could emit dim light about 1,000th and the amount needed to read for a few hours. Man, peep the slang. In the new study, Strano and his colleagues wanted to create components that could extend the duration of the light and make it brighter. They came up with the idea of using a capacitor, which is part of an electrical circuit that can store electricity and release it when needed. In the case of glowing plants, a light capacitor can be used to store light in the form of photons, then gradually release it over time. To create the light capacitor, the research decided to use a type of material known as phosphor. These materials can absorb either visible or ultraviolet light and then slowly release it as a phosphorescent glow. The researcher used a compound called strontium illuminate, which can be formed into nanoparticles as their phosphor. Before embedding them in the plants, the researchers coated the particles in silica, which protects the plant from damage. The particles, which are several hundreds nanometers in diameter, can be infused into the plants through the stomata, small pores located on the surface of the leaves. The particles accumulate in a spongy layer called the mesophyll, where they form a thin film. A major conclusion of the new study is that the mesophyll of a living plant can be made to display these photonic particles without hunting the plant or sacrificing lighting properties, the researcher says. Man, peep the slang. This field can absorb protons either from the sunlight or an LED. The researchers showed that after 10 seconds of blue LED exposure, their plants could emit light for about an hour. The light was brightest for the first 5 minutes and then gradually diminished. The plants can be continually recharged for at least 2 weeks, as the team demonstrated during an experimental exhibition at the Smithsonian Institute of Design in 2019. We needed to have an intense light delivered as one pulse for a few seconds, and they can charge it. Gordichuk says, we also, I ain't get that name right, says, we also showed that we could use big lenses such as Fresnel lens to transfer or amplify light a distance more than 1 meter. This is a good step towards creating lighting at a scale that people could use. The plant properties exhibition at the Smithsonian demonstrated a future vision where lighting infrastructure from living plants is an integral part of the spaces where people work and live. Kennedy says if living plants could be the starting point of advanced technology, plants might replace our current unsustainable urban electrical lighting grid for the mutual benefit of all plant-dependent species, including people. I kind of figured that's where they was going, man. Peter Slang, large-scale illumination. The MIT researchers found that the light capacitors approach can work in many different plant species, including basil, watercress, and tobacco. The researchers found that they also showed that they could illuminate the leaves of a plant called Thailand elephant ear, which can be more than a foot wide, a size that could make the plants useful as an outdoor living source. Man, Peter Slang, the researchers also investigated whether nanoparticles interfere with normal plant function. They found that over a 10-day period, the plants were able to photosynthesize normally and to evaporate water through their stomata. Once the experiment was over, the researchers were able to extract about 60% of the phosphorus from plants and reuse them in another plant. Researchers in Strano's lab are now working on combining the phosphor light capacity particles with the luciferase nanoparticles that can be used in their 2017 study, in hopes that combining the two technologies will produce plants that can produce even brighter light for a longer period of time. Man, Peter Slang.